Hello, welcome to Wednesday's Math. Today we are starting in lesson 15-5, which is on page 883 in your math book. So go get your math book and make sure that you're ready to go. Got a pencil? Okay. This is a really fun lesson that's going to set you up for something big for third grade, which is called multiplication. Have you ever heard of that? Some of you have started to memorize multiplication facts. That's a really good thing to do if you're solid in your addition and subtraction, because you really need to nail down the addition and subtraction before you can head into multiplication and division. Yeah. So this lesson on page 883, it says, how many equal squares cover this rectangle? How could you show this with an addition equation? So you need to look at the shape that they gave you. And guess what? I found a marker that I can use. Do you notice that they used, hi, there you are. Do you notice that they used vocab in here that you already know? Columns and rows. Do you see why that's important now? Because now we are headed into doing repeated addition, which you've heard of before. And we're using the same terminology, and this is going to lead you right into third grade math. Okay? So across the top is the word columns, and down on the side is rows. So you've got columns and you've got rows. Sorry for my chicken scratch. And then we make our shape. Okay, and then what you need to do is see how many squares. This is what it's asking us to do. See how many squares are there. So it should look like this, okay? Do you see that in your book? And then underneath it says equal squares. And then there's a spot for you to write an equation. And if any of you are saying, I don't know what that means, I'm gonna hang you by your toenails. You do know what an equation is and you know how to write one, okay? So this is where we're going to use the columns and the rows. You need to simply count whether you want to do columns first or rows first. Either one is totally fine. If you are counting across the top, right here, how many do you see? So this would be 5, right? Okay, and you see 5 here, and you see 5 here, and you see 5 here. Sorry about that. Okay, so if we want to do it that way, we would say, we would go here, 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals, and you can count by 5s to get there, so how many does that equal? 20. But if you wanted to do it the other way, look. If we use the columns, there's 4, right? So another way to write this would be 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4, and guess what? It equals 20. It's going to be the same because there's still the same number of squares. Do you remember we used to count in the classroom and I would say, if we're going to count the total number of kids and we count the girls first and then we count the boys, is it going to be the same if I count the boys first and then the girls? Well, of course it is, because it's the same number. It's the same number of squares. We're just choosing whether we want to count across or if we want to count down. And then you use repeated addition. 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 equals 20 is the same as 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4 equals 20. So guess what? If I look at this shape, this is for you math brains that are already into multiplication. If I look at this shape, I have 5 across the top and 4 going down. 5 times 4, guess what it's going to equal? 20. That's right. That's multiplication right there. Okay? So in this lesson, that's what you're doing. You're basically counting squares and then using repeated addition to get your answer. Just setting you up for a little bit of third grade. Okay? Go ahead and do that. And then 15-6, This is a super fun lesson that we would use tangrams for. So again, this is another thing where I'm going to try to find an activity with tangrams to be able to add to this lesson because it's a fun way to play with shapes. And what you're going to notice is that inside some of these shapes are other shapes. And you can build those shapes by simply putting those shapes together. Okay, for example, I'll show you another one. Let me put it up here. Can you see up here? Yeah, you can. Okay. Here we have a four-sided figure, right? This is what shape? Like a rectangle? Well, inside here, I can put other shapes. So I can divide it here and make two other shapes out of it, right? And that would be like having two squares as a part of a rectangle. But I could also have a shape like this and then draw triangles inside it. So there's triangles that could end up inside one of these shapes. It's super fun. And you've played around with this a little bit in the classroom when I've had tangrams as part of centers, but I feel like it was way back in the fall. So anyway, they're gonna ask you to do that and then to explain the part of that shape that you have just put into shares. And think about that word, share. So like when we have something and we need to share it, right? Sometimes we break it in half. We wanna make sure it's you get an equal side and I get an equal side, okay? If we had a pizza and I said that we get to share the pizza, we would cut it down the middle so that you would get half and I would get half. So shares that are equal are the same size. They make it fair. If it's not the same size, like if I took a huge piece of that pizza and I just gave you a little tiny bit, that wouldn't be fair and the shares would not be equal, right? So that's basically what you are doing through the guided practice and into independent practice of this lesson. And then I asked you to even cut some shapes into some fair and equal halves or quarters or 3 equal shares. If you have 2 other friends you got to share with, you got to have 3 equal parts, right? If you do that and you separate things into 3 equal parts, they're in thirds. If you separate something into 4 equal parts, those are in fourths. And now you're doing fractions. That's totally 3rd grade. All right, so this is what you're doing in these 2 lessons. Tomorrow, we'll be headed into the last day of our math for this topic. So congratulations, you're almost there. Make sure you're keeping up on your work. Make sure you're completing your things to hand in to me and ask mom and dad to bring them to the bins outside the school. We have a Google Meet on Friday at 10, so please get it on your calendar. I love to see you guys, and I'll be giving more directions about other things that we'll be doing the next week as well.